Welcome to our discussion. We're so glad that you have joined us. I'm Norm Peckham, and I have with me Dr. Ariel Roth, biologist, scientist, author. We're so glad that you're here with us. This is going to be the second in a series of three discussions on the fossil record. In the first discussion, we kind of learned about some general order to the fossil record and some things that kind of created some problems for the creationist. This time, we want to look at some of the problems for the evolutionist. And so let's go and talk about the fossil record.
Just as a review, when we're talking about this fossil record, we're talking about the different kinds of fossils at different levels. We find the deeper rocks, you have different kinds of fossils, and you have higher up and so on. And what does this sequence mean and so on? And we're talking about these two very contrasting models. One, did this develop over billions of years? Gradual process of evolution producing more advanced organisms? Or is the fossil record mainly the result of the Genesis flood described in the Bible that followed a recent creation?
So we need to look at what's there in nature to try and help us make that decision.
Exactly. This is a picture of that fossil record, giving you an idea of the various kinds of organisms we find as we go up and down through those layers. And of course, the lowest ones are considered to be the oldest, and the ones at the top, the youngest, and so on. The question we're addressing is, what about the gaps between these various fossils? Are they there, or is there a continuous sequence as evolution progressed from one small change to another?
The current evolutionary theory says it was a series of small progressions that led from one type of organism to another type.
And so we're going to look at that and see if that is what happened. There should be good evidence for this.
Yes.
Now, Charles Darwin was aware of this problem. And 150 years ago, in his famous book, The Origin of Species, he openly admits to this problem. This is typical of the way Darwin writes. He points out a problem and he emphasizes how very serious it is, and then he provides the solution. This is how serious a problem he stated here in his book here, written way back in 1859. He says, "But just in proportion as this process of extermination has acted on an enormous scale, so must the number of intermediate varieties which have formerly existed on the earth be truly enormous."
We should have the intermediates.
Yes. And then he says, "Why then is not every geological formation, every stratum, full of such intermediate links? Geology surely does not reveal such finely graduated organism chain, and this perhaps is the most obvious and gravest objection that can be urged against my theory. If evolution had taken place, there should be that solid continuity
from one kind to the next."
And
he says he couldn't find them in his day.
Right.
So you said he laid out the problem, then provided an answer. What was his answer?
Well, he suggested the reason is that no parts of the geologic column are missing, and so the organisms that are evolving there are not there. But certainly you think over the earth somewhere the geologic column would be preserved. He suggested also, well, in the deep oceans, you don't have rapid deposition. He's not correct there. He's wrong there, but it's just his suggestion. And besides that, The fossils we're talking about here, these are not deep ocean fossils at all and so on. These are not organisms living in the deep ocean. So his explanations were not all that great.
So he expected that more fossils would be found then, did he not?
Oh yes, and you know, and this has been usually over time we will find these intermediates. And this is suggested many times and so on. Well, just give us time and so on, we'll find them. The problem with that is that we've found so many fossils over time that now we can be very sure that there is a gap. I mean, we've found over 330,000 different species, millions of fossils we found, and classified into these 330,000 species. And when you have so many samples, you can be sure that when you don't find intermediates, the more samples you find, the more sure those intermediates are for real.
Well, are there lots of nooks and crannies and places where we might find fossils that haven't been explored?
This is always possible. This is always possible and so on. But when you're dealing with such a great population, there's little question that you've got a pretty good picture of what's out there. We do find intermediates and so on, some usually related to each other. The problem is, where are the organisms between the major groups? The major groups. Now, when you have 330,000 species, it's more than that actually, been reported in the scientific literature. Some are bound to be related to others and so on. And, but that's not where the issue is. The issue is, where are those intermediates between the major groups? Here's another example here, but this is 70 years later, telling you that things haven't improved over time, as you can see from these various statements.
And a few 100,000 fossils later.
Yes. Yeah.
And then he says, the facts are that all the fossils, even the very earliest of them, fall into existing major categories. This is indisputable.
This is a statement from a leading paleontologist in a leading museum. I mean, the Smithsonian Institution, our national museum. Wow. So, and he, 70 years later, he has not found those intermediates. They all fall into major groups, he states.
That are known.
Yes. And here's another statement from a very leading journal, Evolution. That journal has an article written by this scholar at the University of Oklahoma, David Kitts, 1974.
Despite the bright promise that paleontology provides a means of seeing evolution, it has presented some nasty difficulties for evolution, the most notorious of which is the presence of gaps in the fossil record. Evolution requires intermediate forms between species, and paleontology does not provide them. And this coming from the premier journal of in paleontology.
Right. Well, at least in evolution.
Yes.
Harold Bold, professor at the University of Texas, in his famous book on the morphology of plants and fungi and so on, he makes this interesting comment.
Quite a comment. The writers, meaning the authors of this book, after carefully weighing the current available evidence of comparative morphology, cytology, biochemistry, and the fossil record, are at present unwilling to amalgamate any two or more of the 19 divisions in which they have tentatively classified the organisms of the plant kingdom. Well, this is saying that the previous one said we didn't find any intermediates in the animal world. This is saying we're not finding them in the plant side.
And if evolution had taken place, eventually you have to amalgamate all of those together, because things started from one original life form and then became diverse into more other groups, and they should all tie together. And here these folks are unwilling to tie these together. Dr. Kemp, Oxford University, 1999, this is long after Darwin. I think we're getting pretty close to the present.
Pretty good. The observed fossil pattern is invariably not compatible with a gradualistic evolutionary process. Fossils only extremely rarely come as lineages of finely graded intermediate forms, connecting ancestors with descendants. Kind of near each other, but nothing big in between.
We've found so many fossils, and still only extremely rarely can we find this. This is in his book, Fossils and Evolution.
I would expect this kind of language from creationists someplace, but this is from the evolutionist.
Well, they are being honest and with the data, but they, of course, would apply an evolutionary explanation to this. And he, for instance, Dr. Kemp, he tries to explain this on the basis, well, probably evolution took place in small populations, so they didn't get preserved, or evolution took place very fast and didn't get preserved and so on because it was going so fast. So he tries to explain this, not as creation, but as an evolutionary interpretation.
But the fact of the lack of intermediates is still there.
Yeah, and you know, we get these intermediates reported in the news every once in a while.
Yeah.
I mean, every few months we seem to have great news about a certain intermediate that has.
If there's an intermediate, well, the media picks it up immediately.
Well, but usually these are close to other organisms that they have, for one thing, and often the hype greatly over-exaggerates what the discovery is worthy of. You know, there was a report just recently about a fossil they found, a beautiful fossil, and it was a lemur, you know, one of these little monkey-like organisms in Madagascar, a beautiful fossil and so on, and it was claimed to be an intermediate in man's evolution, and a lot was made of this, and there was so much hype that even the scientific community reacted against what the
hype.
Evolutionists were saying. Yeah, and there was an article in the top leading scientific journal, the Journal of Science, that criticized very much the hype and the misinformation from this great big announcement about this intermediate fossil. Then another one is found somewhere else, and we have another big announcement, we find out, well, it really doesn't quite fit. And recently an article has come out about this is a lemur thing, stated, these are by some leading anthropologists and so on. This supposed wonderful fossil, Ida, it was a name given to it, is not in man's evolutionary lineage. So you need to be careful about the excitement about these intermediate fossils. Then we come to the flowers. There's an interesting picture in connection with flowers. There's a picture of some flowers. You know, we enjoy flowers so much. They're so unique. They're wonderful, and they even smell very good, most of them, and so on. But this has been labeled as an abominable mystery, and that's not by creationists. Read this statement by Dr. Bold again from University of Texas.
About a century ago, Charles Darwin wrote that the sudden appearance in the abundance of flowering plants in relatively recent rock strata was an abominable mystery. In spite of advances in our knowledge of comparative floral morphology and of the fossil record, and in spite of the publication of many pages of speculation on this subject, Darwin's words still eloquently summarize the current state of our knowledge. An abominable mystery.
It's still an abominable mystery. And Robert Carroll at McGill University, a very, very respected paleontologist, he comments here, in no case can the gradual evolution of these characters of groups be documented. He's talking about different groups of flowering plants. You can't document how one flower plant changed to another type of thing. Again, witnessing the fact the intermediates are a hard thing to find. And then you look at the animal fossils. The origin of flight is we don't have good evidence of how flight developed. This is a fossil dragonfly, you know, ordinary one. But sometimes in the fossil record, we can find dragonflies that have a wingspan of 30 inches, you know, and you can imagine those things flying around.
Hate to get hit with one of them.
But the first dragonflies you find are fully developed dragonflies. They can fly and so on. Where there are the intermediates? Yeah. Then you come to a bat. The very first bats we find are fully developed bats. Bats are supposed to evolve from a mouse, and somewhere along the way the mouse would give up his front legs and change them into wings, as you can see from this picture of this bat. Aside from the fact, you know, when you don't have a good leg nor a good wing, you have something that's just in the way, which does not bode for good evolutionary survival of the fittest. No. Type of thing. You got the fact that we don't see any intermediates in the fossil record for these wonderful developments that we have in evolution here. So there are many cases of this. There's evolutionary trees. You may not be familiar with evolution. I think most people are familiar with evolutionary trees, but this is one of the earliest evolutionary trees that was ever produced, way back in 1866. And I realize you can't read the labels on it and so on, but you can see down at the bottom is a trunk of a tree and then branches and so on. And we have all kinds of different organisms and different classes and groups, as Ernest Haeckel in Germany, who made this chart, proposed here. But the problem is that while we have all kinds of organisms for the leaves on this tree, only rarely can you suggest any organisms for the trunk or the branches. You can see better in this tree. And this is not something that was only the case way back then in 1866. Here's a statement by Stephen Gould, passed away recently, but leading Harvard paleontologist.
The extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. The evolutionary tree that adorns our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches. The rest is inference, however reasonable, not the evidence of fossils.
Now, Gould was not defending creation here. He was trying to defend his model that we have rapid evolution taking place in very small groups type of thing. That's why we don't see these type of fossils. But he inadvertently points out this fact that, hey, the leaves are there, but the rest of the tree
But the connections
is not there. Now, because of that, we can make all kinds of different trees because there aren't the connections between the various groups. And I have here a diagram of two different trees here. And these are very different from each other. I'm sure you can't see the various labels and so on, but the top is the end of evolution and begins at the bottom and so on. And if you go by way of the diagram at the left, you find that flatworms are not in man's evolutionary ancestry because they're over in the right branch. On the other hand, the diagram at the right, there somewhere is we are supposed to have come up from one-celled organism and so on. The flatworms are there in our part of our ancestry type thing.
If the evidence isn't there, you can make up anything you want.
That's the point. It tells you those intermediates are not there, and so we make these different kinds of trees, and very seldom do you find any two evolutionary trees that agree with each other. The history of this battle got a little personal with me once, and I just tell you a story. When I was a graduate student, getting my PhD, in the department where I was taking my work, the faculty became concerned that creationists might be getting through their department. And I thank God that I got through there.
Yes. So do we.
And so they were discussing my case, and the professor of evolution called me in once. This is a faculty of about 32 people in the zoology department. And he said, we've been discussing you in faculty meetings. He says, and we realize it's your business, whatever you want to believe, but it is our business that we put out a scientist. And what are your beliefs? And I told him, well, I could follow the pattern that you do in evolutionary thinking. I said, but I run into serious problems. And he said, well, what are they? I told him, well, you know, you go down in the fossil record of turtles, and we find all kinds of turtles in the fossil record. I mean, thousands of them. Some of them 10 feet. I mean, these are huge turtles, much larger than anything living right now. 10-foot turtles you have there. You go down to the lowest turtle that was found in China, and it's just a turtle that fits very well into the pattern of what a turtle is like. And what did the turtle evolve from? A turtle is a very different kind of animal as far as its shell is concerned, you know. And you, in order to make a turtle from a lizard, turtle's supposed to evolve some kind of lizard-like thing. And you know, turtles are very closely related to reptiles. They're what we call amniotes because they have this amnion membrane in the embryonic development. But the turtle is supposed to have evolved among these groups. Birds, mammals, and reptiles are in this group, the amniotes we call them, and so on. And so it's assumed the turtle evolved from some kind of lizard-like, but in all these amniotes, except the turtle group, as far as we know, the pectoral girdle is on the outside of the ribs. And this is where the peculiar structure of the turtle comes into being. And this picture shows you here that this is a huge fossil ground sloth. See that red arrow up at the top? It points to the bones that support the arms, if you want to use that term, the forelimbs, at least, of this giant sloth. And that pectoral girdle is outside the ribs, as you can see there. Now, in the evolutionary scenario, the ribs became the shell of the turtle.
Okay.
And this is what is accepted because the shell is very much attached to the vertebral column. How did that pectoral girdle get from the outside onto the inside of the turtle?
Because the girdle is on the inside of the rib cage in the turtle and on the outside in all the rest of them.
Yes. Now you see it on the outside here. Now here's a picture of a turtle cross section. You can see the head at the left there. You can see the shell covering the top and the vertebral column below it and so on. And the ribs, you can see some suggestion of the ribs there a little bit in the diagram. But the red bones, the bones that are in red there, are the pectoral girdle. They're supposed to be on the outside of the ribs, which would be outside the shell, since the shell evolved from the ribs. And here they are on the inside. To get them on the inside, you're going to have to move the bones. You're going to have to move the muscles. The attachment of the muscles has to be different. You're going to have to move blood vessels, nerves. I mean, and you leave no fossil record whatsoever. Here's a picture of the inside of a turtle. And you can see right there the pectoral girdle where the red arrow points to it. You see how well it's on the inside. You can see the vertebral column is kind of a dark line there to just to the left of the middle of the turtle. They've removed the bottom of the turtle there so you can see the bones on the inside. But this tells you a little bit about that.
So did they let you graduate?
I thank the Lord they let me graduate. They told me the only reason we're letting you graduate is because we don't know what to do with you. I thought I had done a good dissertation, but no, it's because they didn't know what to do with it. Anyway, so we have this fossil record. We don't have these intermediates especially for the major groups. And we'd expect a common ancestor. As you go down to the bottom of this chart, you should see everything merging into one organism, the first kind of organism we have, and a solid continuity all the way through. It's not there.
It's not there.
All of a sudden we find all kinds of different types. There is no evolutionary tree to speak of. There are lots of trees. You might have lots of trees with variation and so on, but generally this is what we have. So this data, you know, it talks very much more of the model you'd expect for the recent creation, the model of the Bible. This is what the fossil record seems to say in terms of intermediates.
Well, so if we have a fossil record that presides some order, and that order is a problem for creationists, that same fossil record doesn't have any intermediates that the evolutionary system would demand. And so, again, you've got good scientific evidence if you want to believe in a creationary model. If you're looking at the problems of these two radically different models. So there will be another lecture where we will talk more about the fossil record, and that will be next time when we continue our search for where is truth. If you would like additional free information about these discussions, there is a PowerPoint resource available on the internet that covers many more details than could be provided in this lecture series. The resource is titled The Bible and Science and is available at scienceandscriptures.com. Be sure to add an S at the end of the word scriptures to get to the right web page. The Bible and Science resource follows the same sequence of topics as the Where is Truth series, but it is divided into 17 separate discussions instead of the 14 videos of the Where is Truth series. The title of the discussions, an introductory outline, and an index will lead you to the topics you want. The Bible and Science discussions served as the resource for the Where is Truth videos. To facilitate understanding and learning, each of the 17 PowerPoint discussions in the Bible and Science resource is provided with a set of questions and their answers. You will find these at the end of each PowerPoint presentation. The Bible and Science resource was designed especially for students and teachers. However, it can be of great help to anybody interested in the topics.